Welcome back to Music Rankings, Reviews, and More. And today we are back with our top 15 albums of the year. We did do a partial list at the halfway point of the year, talking about our top 10 from the year so far, but this includes all albums released in 2023. I mean, obviously not we're not going to talk about every album released in 2023. That would take too long, but we're talking about our top 15. So there's going to be some that are obviously the same as our previous list, but there's also going to be a lot of new additions, of course, because some albums will eventually from our last list get bumped off completely and some will remain, and then we'll also have more albums. First, we're going to probably start off with some honorable mentions because there was definitely a lot of good and great albums that could have made our list, but definitely didn't, obviously. But there's a lot of great ones that could have. So
Yep.
we wanted to give those. For me, I'll just shout out my other ones that I gave an 8 out of 10 score to because that's where my list starts is the 8 out of 10 range and works up higher. Um, so yeah, starting off, Dying of Everything by Obituary is an honorable mention for me. Actually, a good metal album from this year. I found like a lot of the metal albums to be released this year, whether it was like more mainstream metal or just, yeah, a lot of it was kind of mediocre, but
Yep.
it's fine. Also, Let's Start Here by Lil Yachty. Yeah, not the pick that a lot of people would expect. It is a
Mm.
rap album, but there's so much psychedelic undertones that actually make it good. I feel like most rap that I like has psychedelic in it, which is kind of weird also because I don't even like psychedelic music a ton, but it really does add flavor when it's not like the main premise of an album. I will say
I,
that.
I I agree with you on
Um,
that one.
Also Face Your Fears by First Signal, which is a really good melodic rock album.
Oh
I
yeah.
thought it was going to be on my list, but it didn't end up being on there. Also, Seven by Winger was that's actually probably the best Winger album. I don't like Winger otherwise for the most part, but I did end up liking this
I
album.
love that album.
And then an album that was on my list previously, The Old Ways Remain by Blood Ceremony. That was a really good album as well, kind of a comeback for the band. And yeah, didn't, it was on my list. It was like number 9, I believe, on the halfway point, but it got bumped off the list because there's a lot of great albums that came out second half of the year.
Hmm.
Also, The Beggar by Swans, that was also on my halfway point. That one got bumped off completely as well. And then a few others. A Thousand Ghosts by Moon Tour. That is actually my cousin's band, and I actually really liked his album, so a shout out to him. But it is a band, but I think it's cool what he's doing. It's like indie rock, so of course I like it. But yeah, and he actually has a good voice, which is surprising, but I never knew that because he never participated in music as a high schooler. But um, and then yeah, also some other ones. Music for the Starling Girl, which is a soundtrack by Lord Huron. It's all new and original music, but I thought I would include it. And then one final one. If I had to, I mean, it's not an album, but it's a song that I wanted to give a shout out to, even though it's not an album, just because it was one of the best songs I heard this year, but the rest of the album kind of disappointed me. So that's Take a Bow by Mammoth. It stood out compared to the rest of the album. It didn't sound as generic, and there's a couple reasons why. I thought the intro reminded me a little bit of the last song off of Red Hot Chili Peppers By the Way album. I don't remember Venice Queen. It reminded me a little bit of that. And I just love that intro. So I was like, fuck yeah. But also the guitar solo in this album is one of the best guitar solos I've heard in a hot minute. So yeah, shout out to that song. The rest of the album, not as much my cup of tea, but that was a great song.
Yeah. So for my honorable mentions, I've got Back to the Water Below by Royal Blood.
Great album.
Heroes and Monsters by Heroes and Monsters. It's a really cool supergroup that I really liked. We've got The Road by Alice Cooper, Where the Light Goes by Matchbox 20, Memento Mori by, I think it's Depeche Mode. I think that's how you
Oh
pronounce
yeah, that was a solid album too. I kind of forgot about that one.
it. Yeah, Lighthouse by Duff McKagan, Second Third Secret by Third Secret,
Oh,
Get
that's a good
Right
one, yeah.
by Heaven's Edge, The Perfume of Decay by Tiger Cub, Horns for a Halo by Elegant Weapons, and Hackney Diamonds by the Rolling Stones.
Nice. It's a
Several
good
of
honorable
those, the
mentions
ones I
list.
first mentioned, pretty much almost made my top 15. It was just kind of a toss up for, oh, which one's going to make it? And, you got to make a
Oh
choice.
yeah, I totally understand that for sure.
Yeah, I have just a few. Yeah, like the one you said, Sarah's Face Your Fears by First Signals. Completely forgot that album existed, I'll be honest, but I do remember it was
Yeah.
pretty good. I mean, that's kind of saying because melodic rock is a lot less on my list this time because yeah, it's if I can't hardly remember it, it probably doesn't deserve to be on my list. But anyways, another melodic rock
Yeah,
album that
I
could have
agree.
made it is Eagle Flight by Revolution Saints. Really good band. Dean Castronevo from Journey. Um, Some other albums I
Mhm.
considered putting Lost Demos by Linkin Park on here, but it's not really like a studio album, and it's like the first few tracks are really great, like unreleased ones from like 20 years ago, but then there's some like it's a lot of demos, so like it didn't really make much sense to put it on here. And then another one, One More Time by Blink 182. I actually really like this, although it didn't stand out a ton, so I didn't think it would really make my list. And then finally, I Care So Much That I Don't Care at All by Glaive, which is like an alternative hyperpop album. I found it kind of weird, but it also did kind
Interesting.
of grow on me over time because it's pretty unique. So
So coming in at my 15 spot is The Second Third Secret by Third Secret. This was on Mariah's honorable mentions list. It almost got kicked off the list. It was tough between this and some of my honorable mentions. I ultimately kept this one on. This was at the halfway point in the year list that I made. And yeah, this is basically what this is it's like an alt rock and post grunge. And I say post grunge because it has the grunge sound, of course, but in a it's obviously after the grunge era, of course, but it doesn't sound like what people typically think of post grunge is like trying to really hard to imitate the vocals of a singer, usually Eddie Vedder, and it just sounding like complete dog shit. Like Creed was considered post grunge, but anyway, that's besides the point. I gave this an album an 8 out of 10. The first couple albums will be 8 out of 10s, and then we'll eventually get higher. So some of the standout tracks for me on this album were Her Disease, Ditch, and Let It Burn. Yeah, not a ton of. I don't think any of these songs would be like on my best songs of the year list, but every song here is really consistent. There's some more slower moments, but there's also a lot of energy packed in this album as well. It's kind of a grunge esque supergroup type album thing. Nowhere near the level of supergroups in the '90s, such as like Mad Season or Temple of the Dog, of course.
Oh
Those are
god.
much better albums than this, but this was still a really good album. And yeah, it barely made my list, but it made it, so that's really all that matters.
Yeah, so coming in at number 15 for me on Christoph's honorable mentions, I have Eagle Flight by the Revolution Saints from 2023. I know this is a super group. I really like the album cover. The album cover is really cool with three eagles and fire, and they're like in stone and whatever. I like the album cover. And it wasn't a super group or anything I'd heard of prior to this year, but it ended up on as an album of interest on my list, and I heard it recently, and I really liked it. It flows really well together. The vocals are good. The instrumentals are good. I don't really have a least favorite. My only kind of ding with this album is it does blend a little bit. Um, so nothing stood out as a least favorite, but some of my favorites are Kids Will Be Kids and Crime of the Century.
nice.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like that's the thing with melodic rock. I almost never have
It's
like
it's
least
melodic
favorites,
rock syndrome, yeah.
unless it's
Melodic rock
like
syndrome.
unless it's like a big melodic rock band. It's just like
Right, which is
I
why
just
I
have a
don't get
bunch of
into a
ones
ton of it.
tied.
I
Yeah,
just I just like this one. I
yeah,
enjoyed listening to it every time. So
yeah.
I feel like the real quick, I feel like the difference between the big groups is they actually know what diversity is, and these groups
Oh
just
yeah,
make like they take one of their bigger hit songs off of any given album, and then they just like
true.
reproduce it, and it sounds like kind of too similar to that. So it,
Yeah, my number 15. So this is the only melodic rock album on my list this year, which, well, not this year, but earlier this year I had a lot more, but I changed that up. So I have Drive by the Defiant. So this is really good melodic instrumentals, some really great synth and guitar, and the vocals are pretty good as well. But like the only reason it's not higher, because it's just not that memorable. Like as I said before, it's the problem with a lot of melodic rock albums, at least newer ones. Besides like the big few big melodic rock bands, like I still love them, like Journey, Survivor, Boston, whatever, the big ones. Those are still really good, but like the thing with smaller melodic rock bands like this, like the music is really good, but like the lyrics and song structures are like so similar a lot, at least compared to like other melodic rock, and it's a really good album for the music itself, but it's not really something I listen to that often or remember easily. And the
yeah,
lyrics are kind of just generic about like partying and life and romance. Like that's fine if you want that, I guess, but like it's not something I can relate to much. Or it's something that sticks with me either. So it's like
right.
really not that memorable. And
So
then
repetitive.
my favorites, 19 Summertime and Hey Life, and I don't have any least favorites because most of the album is tied, basically. But yeah,
yeah, that makes sense. That one for me got, I think I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. So if there was an honorable mentions part two,
yeah.
that would definitely go on there. So I really did enjoy that album, but like you said, melodic rock syndrome, it's a thing.
hmm
So can't really put it like on my list. But yeah, coming in at my number 14 spot, also with a score of 8 out of 10, is Austin by Post Malone. Basically, this album is a like synth pop and indie pop album. It's very different, I would say, than any of his previous releases. There's a lot more focus on the pop side of things as well as like even rock at times. There's a lot more like guitar on this album for sure. Most of which I think he does play. I could be wrong though.
Mm.
And this was a pretty interesting album because I didn't know how I was going to feel about it, but I did know and I'd had heard of like some of the singles and listened to them and all like before the album came out, and I was like they were pretty good, so I was just like, all right, I'll give it a listen. And there's of course still like, elements of like rap and hip hop here, but definitely significantly less. It feels way more in the singer-songwriter vein of things, and which obviously I like more. So this is probably my second favorite album from him. The only one I would put over it is probably Hollywood's Bleeding from 2019, mostly because that was like the start of his more singer-songwriter. And there's higher high points on that song, but the rest is also pretty consistent. Um, this isn't completely consistent all the way through. Like I definitely feel like there's songs here that are clearly better than others, but that's just kind of what you're gonna get from any more mainstream pop star, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I'm with you
And
on
he's
that one.
actually he and I guess I could also put Bruno Mars in that category, are like two of the more mainstream pop stars that actually like I would say have actually good music, and like not always, but like more often than not, which is good. And so yeah, this was a pretty good album. It's not always consistent all the way through. Some of my favorites would be the first track, Don't Understand. Um, yeah. Also, yeah, speaking of this song, but also literally could apply to most every song, except for probably track 10, Speedometer, even though that is instrumentally a nice song to listen to. I don't think it means as much as the other songs lyrically. I feel like there's a lot of emphasis on the lyrics here, and like he reveals a lot more about himself in this project rather than, talk about useless, like typical rap and hip hop shit. And then also Too Cool to Die was another one. I thought the build up to the chorus was really satisfying on this track, and then also Overdrive, which was one of the singles. The other two were not singles that I listed, but Overdrive was my favorite single of this, mostly because there's a lot more melodic chords happening here and a lot of just like acoustic and electric guitar. And also it was a really satisfying listen. So that's the satisfying listen songs were the ones that stood out for me. So that was my number 14.
That's a really that was a really good album. For me, coming in at number 14, a band that I've heard so much about, but I've just never made it around. There's so many bands to listen to. There's so many albums to listen to. Coming in at number 14, we have Chronicles of a Diamond by the Black Pumas, from October 27th. It's considered, I think, a psychedelic soul band with some R&B and rock elements in there as well.
Yeah, that's what I have it down as. So
Yeah, yeah. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into because I didn't look that up. I just knew it was a band. So I put it on and I'm like, whoa, all right. That's all right. I don't know what I was expecting, but I don't think this was it.
yeah,
Um,
no, that was my first reaction. I actually listened to their debut album, I think 2 years after it came out. It was like 2021. I like their debut more, but that's the one that was my first experience with them. So
yeah, yeah, this was mine and I was coming and going completely blind. Um, so that was interesting. My favorites would probably be the title track, uh, Mrs. Postman. I like Savignon. I like Gemini Sun, Tomorrow. I didn't care so much for More Than a Love Song, which is weird because that was a hit on it, but whatever.
I like that one, but
Um,
it's not in my like top two or three or anything.
no, no, and it could have just been the one that was just kind of a bit of a shock still, even though I listened to it a couple times. And Rock and Roll, it was okay. It didn't have as much to it as the other ones. But overall, I love it. It's another one with a great album cover. I think the album art is really fun. I like
Agreed.
how the eyes and the teeth are made of diamonds on the Pumas, and the vocals are really good on this album. He hit some really cool notes in it as well.
Okay, at number 14 for mine, I have Guts by Olivia Rodrigo. So I actually just listened to this album recently. obviously heard a ton about it because people have been talking about it a lot, but I never really thought to listen to it until recently. And it was a lot better than I expected. It's a pretty fun and catchy pop album, and actually has some pretty good lyrics about like some of the events of her life and the challenges she goes through. The lyrics, they might seem basic at first glance for some of them, but like they are actually quite meaningful. And it's far from the best lyrics or anything, but it is nice to see like a mainstream pop album like this with good lyrics. Like, and it's not too different from her first album, but I do like the mix of more upbeat, energetic songs and slower piano songs. That's always nice to have variety. This album also leans into rock more, like it's still pop, but like it has more of like an alternative or pop punk sound at times, and I love that. And it's just songs from this album have just been getting stuck in my head a lot more recently, and I could see this growing on me. Some strength. This album has pretty good drumming and some pretty good guitar as well, though the guitar is not always that prevalent. The melodies are great and the songs are just really catchy. And as I said, I love the sort of the pop rock sound of the album, and the soft piano and the ballads is very nice as well. Weaknesses is nothing super unique or creative, as like it's a similar formula to her first album, but like that's not really a bad thing. I still like it how it is, and my favorites are All American Bitch, Get 'Em Back, Ballad of a Homeschooled Girl, and Love is Embarrassing, and Vampire. It's kind of hard to pick for that. But yeah,
Interesting. You
I
know
ended up
much
really
about
liking this one.
school and stuff. Me being a
Yeah.
homeschool, kid, but I listened to her first album and I listened to some of the songs from this one because I have a friend who wanted me to hear them. And that's really my only ding. I said, hey, if you're into this kind of thing already, you'll love it. But if you're not,
Hmm.
this isn't going to reinvent the wheel. It's nothing you
Oh
haven't
yeah,
heard
for
before.
sure. I never
And
Yeah,
actually
and then
listened
you're not
to
gonna
the
like
in
it.
full
But
fact,
first
sometimes
I
that's
feel
album.
what
like
it is.
she's more bringing back ideas from the past, and not by like the past meaning like so far into the past, but like 2000s. There's a lot of 2000s ideas. They're
Yeah, yeah.
definitely new and invented. So I'm gonna give one, just like two or three things I'm gonna say about this album. I think I rated this album. I'm pretty sure I gave it like a 5, so I definitely don't hate it. One thing I will say that I loved about the album, which I can't really say there's anything else I loved about it because I'm just not a fan of her music. The production on this is actually really good. Like
Yeah.
that, I will say. So coming in at my number 13 spot is one that I know Mariah has on her list. I mean, most of our list is like similarities. I think there's only 4 or 5 that we don't have in common, which is
There's, I think,
yeah,
three.
yeah, 3 or 4 at most. And then so this is "Can't Find the Brakes" by Dirty Honey. Um, yeah, there was a lot of hard rock that came out this year, and a lot of it I found to be very generic or ripping off other artists. And by ripping off, I don't mean like literally ripping off, but like I mean in the sense that like you sound too much like another artist. And while yes, it sounds good, we'll get to that at the end of the video. There's one of the albums that I put in my. There's another list I'll talk about, and it just sounds too much like another band or multiple other bands. But yeah, anyway, so I gave this album an 8 out of 10. It was most of the genre was like blues rock, rock and roll, and melodic hard rock. So the thing with this is it doesn't get fucked by being a melodic album because it's actually heavier than a lot of the melodic rock albums that came out this year, and it's not really like completely rooted in being melodic necessarily. It's more riff driven and guitar driven than a lot of those albums. Um, the vocals here aren't always my cup of tea, but I will say like generally they were pretty good to great on this album for the most of it. Um also what's that? Yeah, so some of my favorite songs, Won't Take Me Alive was my favorite on this one. The riff on here is very, very similar to Trampled Underfoot. It's very similar to that riff, and that kind of bugs me a bit, but it sounds really good, so it's still my favorite. Also, another one that kind of sees them expanding their sound, Coming Home, Ballad of the Shire. That
Fire. That
one,
was my favorite one. That's my
that
favorite
one
one.
expands their sound. It's actually original compared to like a lot of the other material, which is not original, but it's not like reinventing the wheel. And while this song doesn't do that either, I think it expands their sound for who they are. And then also, and then another one of my favorites on this was Rebel Sun, which I thought was really good as well. And there was a lot of other good songs on this. I mean, all the songs were at least good at bare minimum, and a few of them were pretty great. So yeah, that was my number 13.
For me, coming in at number 13, we have Walk Around the Moon by Dave Matthews Band, which I know is going to be on I know it's at least on your list, Cyrus, because I know you really like that one from May
Hmm.
19th. This is a I again, this seems to be a theme for some reason. I love the album art. It's very different. It's very weird. It's fun. It's interesting. It makes you look at it and stare for a moment, kind of
Yeah.
take it all
Well,
in
I think
without like blinding you.
ironically, yeah, ironically enough, I feel like there's some like Mid-Eastern influence in the album art, both with this album and then also the Black Pumas one. Not the
Yep.
same art, but like it's from like the same place of art, I feel like.
Yep. No, I
So,
agree with you on that one. And this was another band. I wouldn't say I went blind into them because I've heard some of their hits. But I hadn't heard much of them just simply because another band I just hadn't gotten the time to go around to, and their hits were fine, but it wasn't like I need to check this band out for me.
well, their hits are better than most of the material on this album, and I only say that because their best albums are in the 90s still.
Right,
But
but I'm just talking about I'd heard maybe one or two of their hits, like not even that
oh
much.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And only a couple times. It's not like they're on constant rotation around me. It wasn't like that kind of thing. So and then I love how this album, each song sounds pretty different, and it's got like a different vibe. It's got a different riff. It kind of all goes together though, and it feels like it shouldn't, but it does. Only issue is sometimes the I forget what song is which just because the title I just it doesn't I don't associate it with the song so well. And I don't always like the vocals and parts. It's not that I don't like it. It's just that it doesn't stand out or elevate it sometimes in a way that I wish they would have done. There's some fantastic tracks in here. Some of my favorite ones are Madman's Eyes, Looking for a Vein, Something to Tell My Baby, and Break Free. This album, it was like some of it I'm like, man, I wish there was a little more energy or a little more just
Okay,
something
yeah.
to it.
The guy's 56. Like, let's cut him some slack. Like in the 90s, his vocals were a lot better, of
Yeah.
course, but yeah. The
No, and
vocals are
that's
still really good for someone that's as old as he
I'm
is
not
on this
trying to
album.
ding on Dave Matthews or Dave Matthews Band. That's the only thing that kept this back from being higher because it could have been. But I obviously it made it on my list and it's not even the last spot. So I really do enjoy it for what it is. Don't get me wrong on that. It's a great album and it's one I highly recommend someone to listen to because it's a really cool listen. And you find all sorts of things that you didn't get on a first listen on other listens, which is one of the beauties of music to me.
All right, so my next pick, some people will really, actually not some people, most people will really hate, but I don't care.
Hi guys. That's me.
That's
And a
Anyways,
okay.
lot of honestly, and a lot of the world too, to say the
anyways,
That's
hear
least.
me
also
out.
So,
Okay, number 13, I have Maybe Man by HAR. So,
boo.
shut up. Let me explain. Anyways, so this was another album that was a lot better than I expected. So I understand HR gets a lot of hate, and a lot of it's for good reason, for sure. They make some really weird decisions in
Yeah.
songs a lot. The music can sound immature, but honestly, I think they did a pretty good job with this album. Sure, it definitely has the AJR moments, like it's AJR. What do you
AJR
expect?
is
But
comes.
honestly, that kind of adds charm to it for me, which is why it
It
stuck with me
does.
more since listening to it. And it's more creative and unique sounding than their past albums as well. Shut up. And I found it pretty fun to listen to, even though it's like it's a weird album, but like I had fun listening to it. Um, so some strengths, I really like the horns and the violin and DJ's crying for help is great. Um, DJ's Crying for Help is just really good. I was listening to that song a lot, and it's very unique for AJR and has a really nice, catchy sound. The lyrics also are pretty interesting. They're singing about like some coming of age experiences, like stuff now that they're adults. Like the DJ's Crying for Help has lyrics about a person that seems happy and makes other people happy, but also is like really sad inside and doesn't really show it. And it's just kind of saying like people need to grow up and find purpose in their life. Some weaknesses, the mixing. I mean, it's AJR. There's some weird moments. There's some weird sounds,
They've
but
never been good at mixing, I will say that.
Yeah.
Even
yeah,
if you like
even
them, I
AJR
don't think
fans will probably
anybody's
say
good.
that. But like I said, I
Yeah.
found it kind of charming. It was fun and unique, and I think I've just grown tolerant to weird music. Honestly, like
Yeah, I agree with that.
I listen to a lot of weird music. That's just kind of my vibe, you know? And there's some occasional auto-tune, and also that's a weakness, of course. Yeah, the song structures are also kind of a weakness and a strength. It's the reason why many people don't like AJR, but at the same time, it does make them unique. So, favorites, the Dumb Song, the DJ's Crying for Help, Touchy Feely Fool, and 2085.
Yeah. real quick, I will push back on that. I actually think that the reason why this is AJR's best project, they have improved, I think, with every album. Because I really think the Living Room is their worst project. A lot of people think it's their sophomore project, but I think it's the Living Room is their worst. Especially when you have songs like Woody Allen. I actually think that this is their least creative album, but I'm not complaining at all. I think when they be more creative, they sound worse because they make a lot of really stupid, questionable decisions.
Mhm.
I this I didn't even hate this album. I just really didn't like it. So that I guess is a step up. But I mean, if I really hated it, I would have The Living Room. Yeah, that album is really shit. That's one of the worst full albums I've heard in a long time. Luckily they were like a bunch of teenagers then when they made that, I think. So I guess it's okay, but like it still really doesn't sound good. This album is definitely a huge improvement from any of their past projects. With it has a good song on it. Yeah, the Dumb Song is actually a good enough song to listen to. The other songs aren't my cup of tea though.
Yeah, and it's funny that it's called the Dumb Song. For me, I heard this album largely against my will because I was not planning on listening to it this year. But then
Smart.
but then my friend offered my boyfriend and I a ride to our fall formal that we had, right? And
Yeah.
we'd drive around and get some other stuff and pick people up. So we were in the car for quite a while. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, there's this new album came out that and I love it so much. You guys got to hear it." And I made the
Oh
mistake of,
no.
"Oh, great!" And then I'm like, and then I see it's AJR, and my eyes like widen, and I was my
You're
boyfriend.
like,
I'm
God
like,
damn it.
yeah, I'm like, I said, "No, you should have stopped me from saying anything. No." So I listened to the entire AJR album multiple times against my will because it ended and then she played it. I heard it on the way there and the way
It
back.
sounds like my brother on that river trip where he played 5 hours of shuffling AJR songs. That
Yeah.
I wanted to throw myself out the goddamn window. Coming in at my number 12 spot, this one did actually make my list at the halfway point of the year because it was released by then. This is In Times New Roman by Queens of the Stone Age. We did review this one on our channel, and we all gave it different scores, various scores, of course. This one for me got another 8 out of 10. It'll be a bit still, I think. Actually, not much longer before we start moving up the board. We're still at that 8 out of 10 range for me, at least. As far as genres go, this is like mainly alt rock, stoner rock, and hard rock. Delve into anything else. It's like pretty much combining those three. And I mean, alt rock and hard rock aren't like too dissimilar, so just kind of that genre. But also stoner rock. I mean, they used to do stoner rock a lot more. They've definitely done it a little less, like in the 2010s, and also on this project. This is definitely an improvement in my opinion from their last album, Villains, but I don't know if it's better than like Clockwork. I think they're about the same level for me. I don't think like if I had to pick between the two, it's like um that big of a difference either way. But yeah, this was a pretty good album, really consistent. There were some standout tracks that were definitely better than some of the other songs. You always like having standout tracks on an album because it definitely it's good. You want the songs on the album to be good, but you definitely want some standouts just so it can like give it that extra boost, like that cherry on top. For me, some of these were Negative Space. I really like the riff in it. Part of in the verses, it sounds a bit like the Smoke on the Water riff a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then also What the People Say was a really good one. Definitely some interesting parts to this song, and there's definitely some change up in the riff, which is always cool. And then Emotion Sickness, which is way more melodic than every other song on this album for sure, which I like. You have these nice backing vocals from the band, and also Josh sounds great as well on lead vocals, but the backing vocals are really what sell this song for me. And the guitar part is also very melodic as well, which, yeah, Queens of Stone Age doesn't usually do. I heard this song in concert in Straight Jacket Thing, which is the last song. Way more experimental than a lot of the other songs on this album. Some of them are just like straightforward rock songs. I wouldn't say this is completely straightforward rock because you also have like the stoner rock vibes, which isn't really straightforward rock. And you also have some experimental things happening here, so it's not just a straightforward rock album. I mean, if it was, it probably wouldn't be on my list anyway because straightforward rock albums tend to be a little bit too vanilla anyway. So yeah, but this was a really great album. So that's my number 12.
Yeah. That album, we obviously reviewed it. My only gripe with that album is it was just, for me at least, it was disappointing because it wasn't very memorable. The only one that really stuck with me is What the People Say, which I do love that song. I think that's a great song, but majority of it didn't stick with me, but for what it is, it's good. It just wasn't, I don't know, just didn't stick in my brain, but it's a good album. It's a solid album for sure. For me, coming in at number 12, which is previously on your list, I have Austin by Post Malone. Uh, I know obviously Post Malone. I know quite a few songs by him and all that. I even have a couple on my playlist, but and I had heard Chemical before. My roommate is really into, well, she's into a lot of stuff. She played Chemical, and I do remember liking it. I didn't realize it was off the newer album though. But I didn't know what to expect coming into this album, and I really enjoyed it. There was only one song, and there was part of I think it was Socialite I didn't like, but the only song I didn't like at all really was Morning, which was kind of weird because it was one of their
Oh,
hits.
really? That was a good song. I mean, it wasn't one of my favorites, but it's definitely nowhere near my least favorite either.
Yeah, I'm just the maybe it was I think it was that. There was just maybe it wasn't that one. There was one though, where the lyrics I was just like, wow, I really don't like this. And I think it was Morning. It might have been there might have been another one
I
too.
don't know. The lyrics were kind of inoffensive, not great compared to some of the other songs. Some of the lyrics on this album are great. I wouldn't say that song had great lyrics, but it didn't have like offensively bad lyrics either. But
Yeah. And then it might have been Socialite that was my least favorite. It was that one also. The lyrics
yeah,
was
Socialite wasn't as special as some of the other tunes on this project for me, so I could understand that.
yeah, but overall I really loved it. The lyrics were there were a lot of really good lyrics that kind of made you think. You really felt like you got more of a window into something, and there was a lot of well thought out songs. I really loved don't the first one, Don't Understand, Something Real, which is the second track. uh
Yep,
Hold My Breath. I think my favorite one was Green Thumb off of here, but
that
there's a lot
one was
of good
underrated
stuff.
for sure.
Yeah, it's a fantastic album, really. It's something I really enjoyed. uh this one does not share the distinction of the other ones of having great album art. It's just him sitting
It's
outside.
not bad album art either. It's not like Dance of Death by Iron Maiden, but
No, it's
or
not.
anything.
It looks kind of like a picture you would just take out on an ordinary day, you know?
Mm. I mean, at least the album sounds like what it looks like a chill, poolside, relaxing by the beach kind of album. At
No,
least for most of
that's
it.
what I was gonna say. You look at the album art, you know exactly what you're getting, and
Yep.
it's really cool. It's down to earth. I was not sure how I was gonna feel about it, but every time I listen to it, I'm like, wow, really enjoy this, and I could even see it growing on me further because it was just great songs. So loved having it. Unexpected thing I didn't expect in my top 15.
All right. My number 12, I have Irgendwo ankommen, which is German for basically to arrive somewhere by Vincent Weiss. So this is a German pop album, and this is some really good rocking and like pop moments, and it's just super catchy. I discovered this when we heard one of the songs in the album My German Class, and I listened to the whole thing quite a few times, and all the songs are pretty good as well. My favorite song, Bleiben Wir, is super catchy. Has like a really great like bouncy beat. That's one of my songs I listened to a lot this year. Ja 9 is basically a rock song with a great electric guitar riff. I really like the vocals and piano. It has a really satisfying pop sound. The lyrics are not too special or unique, but they're not bad either. And my favorites are Bleiben wir, which basically translates to We Stay as Us, Ja, Nein, which is yes, no, and then Mehr mit dir, which is more with you. And I just found this really enjoyable to listen to, and that's pretty much all I have to say.
Anyway, coming in at my 11th spot, like last year, we had Red Hot Chili Peppers, which made my list twice. This is a band that will be making the list twice. There's no other bands on here that are making the list twice, partially due because most bands don't release two albums in a year, and for good reason usually.
Yeah, but these are
Um,
short albums too. So
yeah. It's not like Red Hot Chili Peppers where they make like a double album and then do it again.
yeah.
But yeah, so for me, number 11, also still at that 8 out of 10 range, I have Lightbringer by Rival Sons. I didn't think this one was as good as their previous release earlier in the year, Dark Fighter. This one was released later into the year. So yeah, it didn't make the halfway point because, obviously we weren't there yet. This one is similar in style to Dark Fighter in terms of it being like a hard rock album and a blues rock album, but there's also some extended song structures. It's only like 6 songs, but it runs some of the average song length. I'm pretty sure is definitely longer. There's a lot more like psychedelic hard rock moments. It's not like slow and like boring psychedelic, but like it it definitely like on certain songs it definitely extends and it has these like bridges of psychedelic hard rock, which is pretty interesting and cool. Um, some of my standout tracks were ironically Dark Fighter, even though I don't know why they named it that on this album and they didn't put it on the actual Dark Fighter album, but it's a thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Mercy was really good. Sweet Life was really good, really energetic, and then Mosaic. So that's my number 11. Yeah.
But for me, coming in at number 11, and this was a really tricky one to place. This is one that has grown on me in aspects, and it hasn't also in aspects, and it's one that I could see ones like Austin moving above it in the future. But so
For
this was a
sure.
tricky one to place because on one hand, I'm kind of disappointed. And on one hand, I really love parts of it. But it's Mammoth 2 by Mammoth WVH
Nice.
from August 4th. And that could just be I had really high expectations. Like I had sky high expectations from it because I've listened to his first one so many times. And the singles are my favorite, and I love From Here basically, and I love the singles. I love the album art again. Um, my favorites are Like a Pastime, Another Celebration at the End of the World, Take a Bow is my favorite. Uh,
Win.
Better Than You and Miles Above Me are other favorites off of here, and the initial track Right never grew on me. I listened to this album again yesterday.
Oh, is that the one that like has like? Is that the crappy one? I know there's one song on there I didn't like at all. I think it's Right.
Yeah, and
Okay, I don't like
yeah,
that song. Yeah, no,
you know,
it's a pass for me.
and I remember talking about this when it came out, and there's another album further up on my list that has another song that just never grew on me, and that happens. So this is was a really tricky album to place. I put it. I was at one point. I'm like, is it going to make my top 15? Then I'm like, no. I love these tracks, and the other ones they're good. They're fine. They're just not super memorable. Anyways, it was an odd one to place, but it ended up being right here, and it's grown on me. We'll see. We'll see what it does with some more time. But there's some really good tracks on here for sure. So yeah, it's a bit of an odd bag, but that's kind of where it ended up. So that's
Makes
my number
sense.
11.
Number 11, I have Autumn Variations by Ed Sheeran. That's a CD. So this continues a
Oh, really?
similar, yeah, so this continues a similar musical style to his earlier album from the year, Subtract, which I'll get to later, spoiler alert. But it's not as good as Subtract, but I still really enjoyed it. It has great lyrics. Specifically, this is 14 songs about 14 of his friends and their life experiences, so each song represents one of his friends and like
That's
what they've
cool.
done in life, and like it's a really cool concept which I really like, and the lyrics are pretty meaningful and interesting. It's also mostly acoustic like Subtract, but it has some nice songs that are more upbeat but still mostly uses just acoustic. And it's also interesting he released this on his independent record label instead of like with a big record label, and didn't release any singles, so he was kind of just releasing this for the fans specifically, not just to be like a hit or whatever. So that was really interesting.
That's
Some
cool.
strengths I like on here. I really like the acoustic guitar playing and his vocals on here. I also like a lot. He sounds just a lot better on his less poppy songs. Like for example, "Shape of You" just sucks and it just sounds just worse
Oh
because
yeah,
the
that
song
song
is
is
just bad.
terrible.
And like I really like Ed Sheeran, but like "Shape of You" just I've never liked that song. It's just annoying. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, but anyways, and the production on this album is like minimal, but it sounds really good because it's not like at all overproduced. It's mostly acoustic, which is really nice, and I like the light instrumentals. And yeah, the only weaknesses I'd say for me, the songs aren't as memorable to me as on Subtract, and the tracklist is a little bit long, but that's about it. And some of my favorites are Plastic Bag, American Town, and Amazing. Yeah.
So I just don't get
Nice.
much into Ed Sheeran, but that sounds pretty interesting.
Also, the cover art
Yeah.
is pretty cool.
I
Like
never got
represents
around
the
to
different
listening to that because
emotions
I
and stuff
literally
on the
did
album.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not know that album even existed, so I would have probably listened to it. Not sure how it would have felt because I've literally never heard a song off of it.
Yeah. I
But I
mean,
mean, if
that's
it's a similar
yeah.
style to Subtract, I probably won't hate it. I didn't care much for Subtract. I think I give it like a 6 out of 10, but like
Mhm.
it's mostly because the lyrics were great and like there were some songs that genuinely were good, and the rest was just kind of meh. So therefore, that little boost gives it to a 6 instead of a 5.
Yeah, that's
That's how
fair.
I'm doing the math here. But yeah, starting off at my number 10 here, I have Higher by Chris Stapleton. So another non-rock album here. This one is usually defined as country, southern rock, and bluegrass. And I would agree because there's definitely a lot of, while it is definitely mainly rooted in country, of course, there's a lot of rock instrumentals and also instrumentals from even other genres as well that make it way more entertaining than a typical country album. Also, it sounds nothing like country pop. You know, you're not getting like a Luke Combs album, for example, with this. You're getting actually great vocals that are genuine. And it's like his vocals are a mix of rock and country. They're not just full on blown country or full on blown pop country. So there's a lot more layers to his voice that make this a lot more enjoyable than like any country album this year, I would say. Um, and also, this is like yeah, he hasn't even been like doing his solo career for actually as long as you'd think. Like he only started in the 2010s. So really, it's not like this is like out of his prime or anything. He's very much in his prime. This is probably his second best album, I would say. Um, so some of the standout tracks for me were South Dakota, which is my personal favorite. It's like the instrumentals are very much like rock in the chorus, and then like very like less or so, I guess you could say, in the verse, and it sounds really cool. And then also "Loving You on My Mind" is great. "Crosswind" and then "Weight of Your World." And so that's the other thing. Also, his song titles aren't like basic, completely basic, you know, country names. I feel like a lot of country names are like, "Oh, beer down in Mexico." There is a song called that, by the way. That is a really
Okay.
bad song title. But yeah,
Okay.
anyway, most of what this album, for me, at least in the positives, was just like it's not basic. It actually has great vocals. I genuinely enjoy this, even though it is country. So this is the first one that is not an 8 out of 10. This is for me an 8.5. So really good country album. Definitely the best I heard this year for sure.
Yeah, kind of like you. My number 10 is a step up from my 11, and another tricky album to place. This was my top album at the midpoint uh
Hmm.
last time, and there are just some songs that I've listened to and I don't like. It's Six by Extreme from June 9th, 2023. So I barely had any time to kind of sit with it before, I'm starting to make a video on it. And
True.
the album art's cool. Name's kind of boring. It's their sixth album. It's called Six. All right. Um, and I love it. I love this album. Again, I think probably my 5 through 10. You could put them in any order and I'd be pretty happy with it. So it's, this one is just for the smallest of things, lower than, with a couple better things, it could have been my number 5. But uh it's a really, really good album for the band. Extreme is usually pretty consistent and they do a great job here. They do some really fun songs, they do really catchy ones. I love Rise, Rebel, Banshee, Other Side of the Rainbow, Small Town Beautiful, The Mask. Basically, their first 6 are my favorite.
Yeah,
But
it's the thing.
also,
It's a front loaded album, and that's its main issue with for me at least it was. I gave it a positive score, but not like an overwhelmingly positive score. So
yeah. Well, and the thing is I absolutely love those 2 songs. I also love Save Me and X Out. Beautiful Girls and Thicker Than Blood, though, I don't care for. Thicker Than Blood is so repetitive, and I liked it initially, but it hasn't sat well with me all that well. And Beautiful Girls just sounds like something annoying you'd hear on an island. It doesn't make any sense with the album, and it's such a weird song. I don't like it. It's it just doesn't fit. But overall, I absolutely love this album. The first, 8 of the 12 at the very least have been in heavy rotation for me, but those other 4 aren't quite to that level. So that's kind of why it ended up at 10. But those first six are amazing. So, anyways, 6 for 6. That's that's where I'm at on that. So definite change from the midpoint, but that's what happens when you get time to sit with it.
Okay, so my number 10, I have But Here We Are by Foo Fighters. So, yeah, this is a really good album and one of their best in a long time. It both sticks to their classic sound and also innovates at the same time. Like with the 10-minute song The Teacher, of course, their longest song ever. That's just really cool, you know? The lyrics is definitely quite a strong point. They're really good. They have some like really interesting themes about like loss and other like sad and like emotional subjects, of course, you know. So Dave's vocals still sound great and the drumming and guitar playing also really good. And I like how the songs can range from like upbeat and energetic to more acoustic and somber at times. The only major negative to this album I just didn't like is just the static noise and the last bit of the teacher and most of rest. It's not really that bad, but it's just like a little nitpick and it hurts my ears a little
It kind
bit.
of prevents you from enjoying the last song for
Yeah, and
me.
just like when I was listening it to the first time, I just had to turn it like way down. I was like, I was like, you just remove the static, and I feel like it would be quite a bit better. Again, it's not a super major thing. I still really like the album, but that was kind of just a thing. I was like, you don't really need to have this here. But like, it's whatever. It's still a really good album. Some of my favorites are Under You, Rescued, but Here We Are title track, and The Teacher. And my least favorite is by far the last track, Rest. Partially just the static, and it's just a little boring. Not bad though.
Which is kind of funny because a lot of Foo Fighters fans include that as like their favorite song on the record, and I'm like, how?
I mean, you can have that
Include
opinion,
rest.
but I don't really understand that. Like,
I don't understand it either. Like, I
even
just
without
yeah,
the
from like
static,
a
it's not that interesting of a song. I don't know,
yeah,
but
Yeah.
yeah.
really good album still.
Like yes, it's really emotional, but like all the songs on this record are like emotional in some
Exactly.
way or another.
Like
So it's like I don't really
something can be upbeat and like still emotional. It doesn't have to be slow to be
to be
emotional.
like yeah, agreed. It's like the lyrics are all in the same quality of
Yeah.
my number 9 was Chronicles of a Diamond by Black Pumas. Mariah already mentioned this. This one was a little lower on my list initially, not at the halfway point, of course, because like it was released later in the year. But I did make a list on Twitter, but my list definitely changed a bit since then. So I also deleted that list. So you will not be able to find it if you're trying to. Um, so yeah, I gave this one also an 8.5 out of 10. Really, really good stuff. It's mostly psychedelic soul and R&B. Just a lot of and there's obviously like rock instrumentals, of course, because that's just what you're gonna get with them as well. But it's not like prime. That's not its number one main genre of the album, of course. The vocals on this are absolutely fantastic. And the grooves here are really great. In all the songs, for sure. Um, my favorite track was Ice Cream, and then some other really good ones were Mrs. Postman was really good, Tomorrow was great. And then one that Mariah wasn't as huge on, but I really enjoyed was Rock and Roll. I thought like the slow nature of it, like gave it some like definitely some psychedelic qualities because part of psychedelic is repeating something over and over again. And they didn't just repeat rock and roll over again, but they would say something, then repeat that line, say another thing, and repeat that line. And just like the guitar licks on this project when were there like were really good. So yeah, it's a really great record. So that's my number 9.
For me, I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it this morning, and I I ended up kind of making a last second switch on this one. So I just kind of switched my 8 and 9. So coming in at number 9, I have 3 by the Winery Dogs. From July 1st, which it's a really, really cool album. The instrumentals are incredible on this. It's a super group, and the instrumentals are so good. The only slight thing I have, not the most memorable it could be, I don't like the album art very much either, but like that's not all that important. I just noticed it. And another, it's another album with with the number in the title. It's their third album, 3. That
Mm-hmm.
seems to be a theme with it this year. I've got 3 on my list that have that. But the everything that the mixing is incredible, the production, the vocals, the instrumentals, are all so good on this album, and it is just a really, really enjoyable album to just put on and listen to. Some of my favorites are, I don't know how you pronounce this, Xanadu, Stars, Mad World, Pharaoh. I mean, it's a really, really well put together album for sure, and it's a really fun listen.
All right. My number nine, I have Mammoth 2 by Mammoth WVH. So I was really surprised. I ended up really liking this. It's a very good album, great instrumentals. The guitar, especially, is very good. He's some really nice
Yeah.
shredding. The guitar solos are awesome, especially in some songs. Maybe he's taking some inspiration from his father, Eddie Van Halen. I don't know. It's quite possible. But he is definitely a great guitar player for sure. I love the riffs and the solos. The drumming also is really good, and the vocals are pretty good as well. Uh, Weakness is the album does blend together a little bit, but that's not really in a bad way. It's less so than like generic melodic rock, I guess. They're just like similar types of
Yeah.
songs for the most part, but like they're all pretty good for the most part. My favorites, I think my top two is actually probably different than most people, but like, so my favorite is actually Erase Me. I don't know why, but this one just like really stood out to me. Like, I was
Oh,
enjoying
I
the
like that
album,
one.
listening to it, and then this one came on. I was like, I don't know, I just was like, wow, I really like the riff, especially in the guitar solo. I really love that. For some reason, the guitar riff at the beginning kind of reminds me of the opening riff to Holiday by Green Day, but like different. I don't really know why. But I really like that song. Also, Waiting was another of my favorites. That one's really good. And another Celebration at the End of the World also I really liked. I like almost all the songs in here. My least favorites though are Right and Optimist. Not a big fan of those ones.
Yeah, Right is just not very good at all. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah, that was my
and
least favorite, so.
yeah, I think that's everybody's least favorite.
Yeah, but I
Um,
Yeah.
really enjoyed this. So yeah.
No, I
yeah.
do too. And you make a good point about the guitar. The guitar work is great. And to me, it
Yeah.
doesn't really sound like his dad all that much. It's not his dad's kind of
Yeah,
playing.
it's not.
He utilizes some
Yeah.
things, but I think that was really good.
Coming in at my number 8 spot, Mariah just talked about this one, Three by Winery Dogs. Still at the 8.5 out of 10 spot for me here. This was a really great hard rock slash alt rock album, and obviously it's a super group that takes members of some pretty iconic bands, I would say. And yeah, and some of my favorite tracks from this were Rise and then Farah, and then also Gaslight was really good as well.
Oh
There's
yeah.
definitely some others I could say for sure. The vocals on this, like, I mean, I mentioned this in the halfway point video already, but I'll mention it again. It gives me some like vague Chris Cornell vibes, not obviously at the level or like the timbre of vocals or quality necessarily, but just like there's some parts in here that like remind me of like later period Chris Cornell, because and I say later period because Chris Cornell like in his later period was not as good as he was in the 90s or 2000s, but he was still better than most singers because he was that good. So if I'm not going to compare him to early period Chris Cornell because that was like untouchable. There's no one that should be compared to early period Chris Cornell for the most part. So yeah, later period Chris Cornell would be a good comparison for me. Um, just yeah, really consistent, but not a ton of like true standout tracks. I mean, I already listed them, but like I felt like the songs on here. The only issue with me with this album was while every song on here was great, not all of them were that memorable for whatever reason, and just didn't stick with me all that much. But it was still a great album, and probably Winery Dog's best output yet, maybe.
So for me, coming in at number 8, I have one that was previously talked about, um, by Cyrus, and it's also one that just keeps like going higher and higher in my list. It's Lightbringer by Rival Sons from October 20th. It's their second album of the year. The other one will make it on my list as well. I feel like I've kind of trapped myself into talking about the album art. It kind of looks like an odd like 90s new school tattoo. So, but it's kind of fun and artsy. I don't mind the album art. For me, my favorite songs on here, Dark Fighter, Mercy, Redemption, and Sweet Life is gotta be one of my most listened to songs of the year. I heard it when I was a single. I love it. I listened. It's been on heavy rotation. I think it's on my on repeat right now. Just such a good, fun, upbeat song. It's really tough to be in a bad mood with that one on. You know, really all of it. I could say Before the Fire and Mosaic I love as well. It's just a really, really good one. Before the Fire doesn't quite stack up as much as the rest of them.
Agreed. Yeah, that one's my least favorite.
Right, that's also my least favorite, but overall a really, really good album that, I'm excited. I want to listen to it again. I've listened to it a couple times already,
Yeah.
um but yeah, overall really, really solid album, and it's just a really enjoyable listen for sure.
All right, number 8, I have Dead Club City by Nothing But Thieves. So yeah, this is just a great album. This whole band just super talented. Definitely shows on this album. It's really unique and just satisfying. Like they have a really nice, especially on this album, like almost like melodic alternative rock sound, if that makes sense. Like especially
It
on this
makes sense,
album,
yeah.
and it's just really just again unique. It's just a really cool album. Vocals, of course, he's an amazing singer. Just really great, powerful vocals. The guitar playing is really great. I think it's like synth, like the alternative rock sound.
Yeah, it's like well, also they give off like 80s vibes in
Yeah,
this
yeah,
album
that.
a lot of the time.
Yeah, I love that for this album. Like that's really just unique, especially for alternative rock. You don't see that as often, and the drumming's great too. Um,
Hence why Nothing But Thieves are like probably the best alternative band right now, but that's just
mm,
my opinion. So
and there's not really any weaknesses here, to be honest. The only thing is like some of the songs in the second half didn't stand out to me as much as like the first half, but like it's all really good and it's a great album. So yeah.
all right, moving up to number 7, another score change here, going up to 9 out of 10. I have quite a
Me
few of
too.
these. I mean, obviously, at least the other 7 or at least a 9 out of 10, if not possibly higher, who knows? So yeah, 9 out of 10 here. This one did move down a bit from the halfway point, and that's partially because there was some other really great albums released this year, but also because I thought about it and I was like, actually, there are 6 albums that I think not only are clearly better albums, but like also sound better, just some are more entertaining. This is still a great record though, because obviously I gave it a 9. This Walk Around the Moon from Dave Matthews Band. Um, so yeah, this was a great record. It had some of their best songs in a while, especially after the very, very mediocre and possibly worse 2018 album Come Tomorrow. That album stunk really bad. Um, but yeah, this is probably my third or fourth favorite album from the band now. Obviously I like their debut more, and Before These Crowded Streets is better, and I would say Crash is a little bit better for me as well. But this is probably my fourth or fifth. I mean, Busted Stuff's also great. Point is that like this is another great album for them, and definitely one of their best in at least probably 20 years, in my opinion. So yeah, some of the standout tracks here, Madman's Eyes, that was one of my favorite songs of the year. Really liked the lyrics and then also the uh, combination of the Mid-Eastern instrumentals and influence there. It Could Happen was really good, reminded me of some of the stuff on Under the Table and Dreaming album. And then All You Wanted Was Tomorrow was pretty cool as well. And then The Only Thing, which was more hard rock and definitely showed that they were still willing to try new things because they don't really do hard rock a lot of the time, but that's okay. They sound great. If they did hard rock all the time, they wouldn't sound as good as they do on the most of their records.
Yep.
And then as for genre, there's so many here. I mean, jazz rock, jam band, acoustic rock, blues rock, alt rock. There's like so many things happening here. And
Everything in the
that's
kitchen
just
sink.
it basically it just encompasses what a diverse band they are. I mean, it's probably the most diverse album in my top 7, but it's not my favorite in my top 7, obviously, because my favorite is whatever I put at 1. But yeah, this was my number 7. Still a really great album, and the vocals for Dave Matthews being like 56, so he's definitely enclosing on 60, not in a couple years. Really great from him. Not as good as his 90s stuff and whatnot, but still really good. So yeah, this is a great album, and that's my number 7. And next.
Yeah, for me, my number 7 was The Winding Way by the Teskey Brothers from June 6, 2023. I don't remember if this was on my mid. I think this was on my midpoint one. Maybe I'd heard it by
It
then.
it, it, it was. It was.
Okay, okay. I wasn't sure. I didn't remember. But this one kills me because I want to put it higher at 7, but like looked over and over, and I'm like, it's just by the slightest bit that I can't justify it being higher.
Well, it's the same thing with me and my number seven. It's not that I like it less. It's just that I like others a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean it's really they're all close. So it kills me I can't have this higher, but you know, uh it is what it is. And this album I don't think I'd even heard of the Teskey Brothers. Or maybe I had and
Oh, I hadn't either. It's just that like that it appeared on the Wikipedia page that I used to listen to like a shitload of albums this year because I actually wanted to like discover some new artists. And while most of the artists on here I already had known about, they were definitely a new addition to knowing period. And that was my first experience to them was this album. So
yeah, they're like I know they're from Australian. They're like blues, kind of blues rock. I don't that doesn't really feel like that encompasses it as well
no,
as
it's
it
more
could.
of like an R&B soul blues thing happening.
Right, right. But if you want an album to lay back and listen to and just enjoy every moment of it, this is your one. If you want a chill one to just relax to, I don't think it gets better than this from this year for that kind of mood at the very least. The vocals are incredible, the instrumentals, you just get lost in the music. It's really just beautiful. Is the best descriptor I have. My favorite song on here is London Bridge. I'm Leaving, Oceans of Emotion. Remember the Time, what will be. I mean, it's a phenomenal album. Oh, Mart is fine, but this is a fantastic album to lay back and listen to, and it's what I've used to do several times when I want to relax after long day or whatever.
So my number seven is kind of a weird pick, but it is the original motion picture soundtrack of the movie Wonka. So yeah, this is a musical soundtrack, and it has all original songs. So I figured why not count it? Because I've been listening to this like crazy since I watched the movie in theaters. It's just I don't know. So yeah, I've just been kind of obsessed with the soundtrack since I saw it in theaters a few weeks ago. It's super catchy. It's really fun and really just fits like the whimsical, magical like vibe of Willy Wonka really well. It's just on here because, like I said, there's a lot of musical songs, and it's not just like a background score. Although I do really like the score of the movie as well. The musical songs stand out a lot. Really creative and like fun, catchy songs that just get stuck in my head all the time. Timothy Chalamet, he plays Wonka, and I think he has a great voice. I love the songs he sings, and the songs sung by the other cast are great, and also the backing vocals of all the people, and even the Oompa Loompa songs are really catchy. And I just had to put this album this high because of how much I've been listening to it, and just how enjoyable and fun it is. Like it's just such a just cool, just like straight up fun experience, really. And yeah, my favorites are A Hat Full of Dreams, Sweet Tooth, You've Never Had Chocolate Like This, and Pure Imagination. It really just ranges from like charming and whimsical to even like goofy and like sweet at times. It's a really fun soundtrack.
Number six, these top six, I mean, 6 through 3 is incredibly close. I could literally put 6 through 3 in any order.
Yep.
Like I said, my top two is set in stone. 6 through 3 literally could go in any order depending on the day because they're all very different vibes and, feels, I would say. But yeah, number six also still at the 9 out of 10. But Here We Are by Foo Fighters. This was a great record. We did review it, so everybody who knows that knows that. I initially put it at an 8 out of 10, and then at some point through the year I moved it up to an 8.5, and then for the final I decided a 9 out of 10. And the reason I decided on that is because I'm gonna go out on a limb. A lot of people are like, "Oh, this is their best album since Wasting Light." No, yes, but actually no. I think this is their best album since 1997's The Color and the Shape. I think this is actually their second best record. I'm just gonna say that
Wow.
because I really think it is. Like the lyrics are better than probably any of their records, so that alone helps
Yeah.
its case. The instrumentation is there. Dave Grohl has not regressed like literally at all as a singer. His style allows him to continue to be vocally right where he has been throughout his career. You got a lot of great songs here. The songwriting was fantastic. The lyrics were fantastic. Vocals. The drumming was done by Dave himself, but it still sounds great. I mean, Dave is one of the best drummers of all time, so of course it sounds great. But yeah, as for genre, mostly alt rock, hard rock, and yeah, that's basically what this is. But and then some of my standout tracks. I actually went in like order of, least favorite track, I guess, to favorite. So Hearing Voices was my fourth favorite track from this album. This was a great song. Really love the instrumentation on this one. Also the glass was really good as well. And then my top two were Set in Stone from this album. Number two, I know a lot of fans don't like this one as much. Honestly, I don't know why, because it's way different for them, and I think that was actually a good thing. Show Me How.
I
Really
love that
love the
one.
comment. Their vocals are so good together. I mean, obviously they're relatives, so it's not too shocking, but it is a great song. And then the best song on this album is no doubt The Teacher. I mean, how could it not be? This song was not only complex, but very, very catchy, and then also very, very beautiful towards the end, except for the last 15 seconds, which I didn't really care for. But it doesn't matter because the rest of the song, so like 9 minutes and 45 seconds of it, is just fantastic. This is one of their best songs ever. Like, yeah, easily. And so that was my number six. Really great record. Really surprised me. I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did. So
For me, coming in at number six, again, kills me that it's this low because it feels like too good of an album to be number six on a list, but you know. We have the first album that was released by Rival Sons this year, Dark Fighter, which is also a song title on the other one. This is 8 songs instead of 6, so it's a bit longer. It came out on June 2nd. So again, it was kind of a newer album to me when we did the halfway point thing. And this album, I really feel like it takes you kind of on a journey, but it takes you away. Like even the first time, I was just really engrossed in the music, and it takes your mind away from everything, which is really cool. Uh,
agreed.
sorry, what'd you say?
I said agreed.
Yeah. And it's really good. It's not to me, it's not that much better than their other one, but it is. So it's here. The album art is also better. I love the tiger, which is very stylized, kind of coming out in the green and the black. Again, we've got a lot of similar like influences, kind of Eastern influences with a lot of these albums. My favorites on here were Mirrors, No One Wants to Die, Bird in the Hand, Rapture, and mm, probably Horse's Breath. I don't know. There were a lot of them I really liked. I
Yeah,
don't really have any.
Horse's Breath just gets better and better with time. That's definitely one of those songs for me.
Yeah, me too, because I wasn't super wild about it on the first listen.
Oh, neither was I, no.
But this album is one that grows on you. It's a very like all-encompassing kind of experience of an album, and it's really good. There are some moments where it's not the strongest, but there are no weak moments to it either. So great album.
Yeah.
Number six, I have Subtract by Ed Sheeran. So this album, this is probably the album that's grown on me the most throughout this year since my initial
Oh, for
listen.
sure.
Yeah, so especially not just because of, but partially because of seeing him live, I really just grew to appreciate him more and like his music more. That just kind of happens with me when I see artists live. But,
Yeah.
anyways, initially I thought it was just a decent album since I didn't really pay as much attention to the lyrics, and I kind of just saw it as like as simple acoustic songs with not much more. But really, that's part of like why this album is so great in my opinion. My taste has also changed a bit more, where I care more about the lyrics now, and albums standing out to me and being memorable. Like a lot of melodic rock albums have great instrumentals, but the lyrics are super generic. So this is just a relaxing, like emotional album with stripped down instrumentals that focus mostly on his vocals and the lyrics. And I've really grown to appreciate the songs and how calming and nice they are to listen to. I really like the production on this album. It's minimalistic because it's mostly acoustic, and like I said before, it's just nice having these mostly acoustic songs and hearing like calm, sad, or like emotional pop songs rather than like crazy like party songs, which I do like those type of songs too sometimes, but it's a nice break. And I really like his vocals and the piano and acoustic guitar especially. I really like here. And the lyrics are also definitely his best for from any of his albums for sure. About different stuff like his emotions and like things like his friend dying, his wife getting a tumor, his fear, depression, anxiety, more stuff like that. So pretty interesting lyrics. Yeah, my favorites are Eyes Closed, Boat, and then Saltwater.
Top five. This was tough to keep this at five because I feel like because it is the band's best album, it probably should be higher. because I did go back and listen to some of their stuff, so that kind of gives it away. So number five, The Winding Way by Teskey Brothers. I do think this is their strongest project to date. I have this still as a 9 out of 10, which is what I originally gave it. So I didn't really change much. As for genre goes, I mean, this is mostly like a soul, R&B, blues, and even there's a lot of a gospel influence, which is not the only album in my top five to have gospel influences in it, believe it or not. So, um, yeah, really great stuff. Just a really good feel good album. I mean, if you want like a true feel good album, it's this one, I think. Some of my favorites, Oceans of Emotions was really good. It's not like my number one favorite from this album, but it was a really good track. Remember the Time was really good. Also, the last track, What Will Be, was fantastic. Because it just like very much expands their sound. It more like in the jam band area as well, I think. And then my easily not, I guess I can't really say easily because all the tracks were great, but like this is my song of the year choice, and also probably one of the best songs I've heard in at least a couple years, I would say. London Bridge is amazing. I mean, this song does everything great. The production is great. The vocals are fantastic. I mean, I think it's just like a callback to like, musicians in the past, like because it uses like similar style and musicianship, and also just like, yeah, very satisfying to listen to. The lyrics are actually meaningful. It's talking about like when everything in your life is kind of gone and you feel like, maybe it's a bridge with a friend that you have, or whether it's like it's something in your life and everything is just falling apart and there's really nothing you can do to stop it. And I feel like everybody can relate to that, but also like the way they go about it, they make it actually sound like there is like a bridge that is just collapsing and everyone's watching and there's nothing you can do. um, so that was a great track. Definitely my track of the year for sure. So it kind of pains me to leave it as the album itself at number five, but there's only four I liked more. So yeah.
For me, coming in at number five, another tricky one to place because this could have been higher, could have been lower. I considered it putting it at like number eight through like number four or something like that, but it ended up at number five. And it is another album with a cool album cover with an animal on it, and another album with a number, and that's my last
Hmm.
one of the numbers albums. But
Oh,
it is Seven by Winger from May 5th of 2023. It is not my favorite Winger album. I hadn't really listened to much Winger at all prior to this album. I knew a couple of the hits, and I didn't like 17 for obvious reasons. Um, not the greatest of moments. Whether you realize that it was a legal age or not, not great. But anyway, so I had no expectations coming into this at all, and I really liked it then. I like it even more now. Um, Heaven's Falling and Tears of Blood. Tears of Blood is my favorite off of this. I just listened to it earlier, but those two songs have been heavily playing a lot. I love both those. I also love Proud Desperado, Voodoo Fire, Broken Glass. It all comes back around. Time Bomb. It is again an album that, like Six, is a bit more front loaded. Most of my favorites are all in a row. But it's pretty great. The other one, Stick the Knife in a Twist, wasn't as much my favorite because it was a bit repetitive. I think Pole is my favorite from 1993, is my favorite Winger album, but this is overall a really really good album, and it has songs I love, and the vocals are really good, the instrumentals are really good, and it is a great album to listen to. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, that's my number five.
Number five, I have Tell Me I'm Alive by All Time Low. So I really love this album, and it's my favorite album by All Time Low. I'd say it's kind of like a mix between pop punk and pop rock. I mean, those are kind of similar, but it's pop alternative something. I don't know. I just find it like really satisfying and fun to listen to. Just like I love just like the whole album really. The best elements on this album, I'd say the instrumentals, the guitar and the drumming, especially, I really like, as well as the vocals too. I really like the production. It kind of has like a smooth sound, like I said before. It's just very satisfying for me to listen to. And I like the variety of song structures and instruments besides just like guitar and drumming. Some songs have like synth as well and like some other things. And I really like almost all the songs. My favorites are the title track, Tell Me I'm Alive, Sleepwalking, which has more of a synth sound, like I said before, Calm Down, Modern Love, The Other Side. There's a lot of ones that could basically tie for like second place. My only least favorite and like weakness, I will say, is New Religion, which is featuring Teddy Swims. I don't like Teddy Swims, and that's basically the
Oh
reason I
yeah,
don't
Teddy
like that
Swims is
song.
ass.
Teddy Swims is just
Terrible
not a good
name.
singer, and it's a
Yeah.
stupid name. Like Teddy does not
Yeah.
swim; he sinks. Okay, like
No, he sings.
yeah, he sings. I don't know.
Not
Teddy
well
swims.
though, not well. Anyway, moving on to my number four, I have Back to the Water Below by Royal Blood, which I also gave a 9 out of 10 to. Um, the genre mainly here is hard rock and alt rock, but it's not typical rock. Like it's not that vanilla flavor of rock because not only do you get some diversity here on this album, I think, I also would say that like the fact that they're using a bass but using it to function as a guitar due to like having these interesting pedals that they use to make their bass sound like a guitar. It's only two people. They have one guy who does drums for them and the other sings and plays bass but tunes it a certain way to make it sound like a guitar, and then like switches in between different types of tuning mid song so he can like create both parts so it sounds like a full band. It's very interesting, sounds really great. Saw him live, he was able to do it really amazing live. Definitely my second favorite concert of the year after Nothing But Thieves. And they're really good live. Like if you haven't seen them, go see them. Yeah, so for standout tracks, the first one for me was Pull Me Through. This was one of the singles off the album, and just it was really good. It expanded their sound. You had like piano, but it also showed that they were still rocking. So it was like, kind of a mid-tempo song, but really good. The Firing Line, another one that was kind of different for them, was really good. It almost gave me some like Foo Fighters vibes. I don't know why. I think it was like the midsection of the song. And then also Tell Me When It's Too Late. So three tracks in a row. That part of the album, tracks 3 through 5, I found to be really strong. The whole album is, but especially that section. This one shows that they're still sticking to that sound, as well as the opening track, Mountains at Midnight. And then my favorite track is one that doesn't actually sound like a typical Royal Blood song. It was the last song on the album, Waves. This was like a really unique song for them, and I really did think that it showcased that they could, you know, add in piano, have like a slower moment, and it be really good still. So that was my favorite from the album.
That was also one I really liked from that album. Not all of it was memorable. The album wasn't entirely memorable enough to me to make the list, but I remember that one being good, and there were some other really good ones. And overall, it's definitely a solid album.
Yeah, it's probably my second favorite album from Royal Blood. I think their debut still tops it, but definitely a really good project from them.
Yeah.
So that's my number four. Mariah.
Nice. Yeah, for me, coming in at number four, I have Can't Find the Brakes by Dirty Honey from November 3rd, 2023. Another one that I messed with the placing of and all that. And this one was the trickiest one for me because it came out the latest of all the albums on my list. It came out in November. And it came out November 3rd, and I was just so swamped with homework from, college semester. I didn't actually hear it until right before finals week. And then I didn't hear it again until last week. And then I heard it, another time this week. So it's the album that I've definitely had the least amount of time with. So it's a bit more tricky for me, but I'm a big Dirty Honey fan. I really liked the album. It's a really, really fun listen. I love that they did some very different stuff for them. There's not a bad track on here. I don't even slightly dislike any of them. I love all the tracks on here, and I'm excited to see kind of how this one goes with time. Album cover is fine. They've got their lips on there with some art, and that's fine. Can't Find the Breaks, I thought was a cool album name. So for me on here, my favorite song on here is one that's very different for them, which is Coming Home or Ballad of the Shire. Won't Take Me Alive, Don't Put Out the Fire, Dirty Mind, Can't Find the Breaks, Rebel Sun. Those were some of my favorite ones. And overall, it's a great album. I just wish I'd had a little more time with it. But yeah, very much a worthy successor that lived up to the hype I had for it, given how much I enjoyed their previous album, EP, and singles.
Yeah, I think their previous album was a little bit better though. I would still say, but that's
No,
like right now.
I would go with that too, but also I've been listening to it a ton for 2 years. But I would also say that
Yeah,
their
yeah.
EP
Time will
might be my
tell.
favorite still, but we'll see.
Yeah, so speaking of Honey, but spelled differently, I have New Planet Heaven by Honey with the U and two N's. So yeah, spelled differently. Um,
Yeah,
Spelled wrong.
I hate that
Thing.
spelling.
well, it's not supposed to be like the food. I don't know what it means actually, but that's besides the point.
It's
So
not that hard. It's okay. Yeah.
okay, so yeah, I love this album. This is I think the only one in my top five to not be there in the first half when we did this. This released in October, so yeah, I really love this album. It has like a pop rock slash like alternative sound. Another one of those albums I just find really satisfying to listen to. I discovered Honey because they opened for Water Parks in May, and their new album definitely did not disappoint at all, and I've liked it more and more over time. It kind of has like a sugary sweet sound, if that makes any sense. I don't really know how to describe it, but like I really love the
I mean,
production.
it would fit the title of their band, so I
Mm,
wouldn't be
yeah, I
surprised.
guess so. True. Yeah, I really like the production, the mixing of like the vocals and the guitar and the drumming, plus like other instruments. I think there's some synth in there too. It's just really well done. And yeah, I think the vocals are really good. The sound is really unique and really good synth and keyboards and drumming and guitar. I don't really have any major weaknesses, so I'll just skip that. My favorites are "Ring in Your Ear" featuring Motion City Soundtrack, "Solo." Those two songs I've been listening to a lot recently, really catchy, and then also "Big Star." And my only least favorite is "My Own Age" because it's kind of more of like an interlude track where there's not a lot happening. So yeah.
Okay, number three for me, I have Darkfighter by Rival Sons. This one, I believe, was my number two at the halfway point, but there was some albums that came out that beat it out. Of course, this one is still a 9 out of. We're still at that 9 out of 10 spot here. This is mostly just a hard rock blues rock thing. Yeah, it sounds kind of like straightforward, of course, but they have like a very modern production style combined with like the rock that sounds of like the 70s and 80s and late 60s. But yeah, it was a really good album. Some of my favorites from this were Mirrors, which was not a single, but it was a really good opening track. A great way to open an
Great
album.
song.
And then Bird in the Hand, very groovy rock track. A really great song. That's probably my favorite on the album if I had to pick one. And then also Rapture was really good, another single. And then another non-single here, Horse's Breath. I really enjoyed the progression of this song. It's definitely one that grows on you over time as well, for sure, for this album. And then also the vocals on this one are fantastic, and just the overall guitar licks and riffs from Scott Holiday are great. I think he's one of the best guitarists of the 2020s. So yeah.
Nice. For me, coming in at number three, I have Dead Club City by Nothing But Thieves, which was released June 30th, 2023. So I really didn't have much time with it when, I just kind of snuck it in before our halfway point video. And, I said, I'm excited to see where this could go. It could, who knows where it could be at the end of the year. Turns out it ends up at a pretty similar spot to where it was last year, which it's really really great. The album art's great. The whole concept album thing, I'm a sucker for that. I love that. Um, and it's a really fun album. For me, my favorite, I was re-listening to it. My favorite is Overcome on here. I just think that's an incredible song. Uh, I also love Keeping You Around, Do You Love Me Yet, Members Only, which I didn't like very much initially. So I find that interesting that it's now one of my favorites.
I
Uh,
mean, not really. The whole album is great. So it usually depends on the day I listen. I always have a new favorite every day, honestly. So
yeah, Green Eyes Sienna, there's a lot of great stuff. Fantastic album. The only thing that brings it down for me, and I talked about this in the initial video of a song I didn't like, and it's a song I still don't like. I really, really, really dislike it. This would probably play my nightmares. Is Pop the Balloon, the closing track.
that's funny because that's most people's, or at least most hardcore fans, quote unquote. Not me, and I consider myself a very much hardcore fan of the band, but that's most people's favorite song. I don't think it's that hard to see why either, honestly. I think
Yeah,
it's a
I
great
I
tune.
just don't like it. I don't like it. Gets a little better as it goes on. I'll give it that. But the first half of it, I'm like, I am not feeling this. This is just really not for me. So that's the only thing that kind of keeps it back a little bit for me. But I could deal with it. I just don't like the first
Yeah,
half of the
I
song.
think I think if you see them in concert, because they actually did play that song in concert, I think it'll change your opinion on the song. Because it did for me. It wasn't one of my favorites, and I mean, it's definitely not my favorite, but like it's definitely among my favorites now because I heard it in live in concert, and they do it so well live that I think it like changes your perspective on the song.
Right.
Maybe.
I respect what it does for the album because for the album, I think it works. And it adds to kind of the mystery
But it
and the
still
weird.
fits the concept.
It fits the concept of the album. I just really don't like it. So, but everything else is so amazing that it's gonna make it at my number three. And I don't know if it could have been higher, but it's so good. It's such a good album. So just Nothing But Thieves is one of the best newer bands out there, and this definitely solidifies that. It's an incredible album.
Yeah. So number three, I have Coco Moon by Owl City. So this is a really fun and catchy album for me. Really great synth pop sound. I really like Adam Young's vocals as well. The way he enunciates words is different than a lot of singers, and it's really interesting. Hearing most of these songs live in concert back in September was awesome too. Really great concert. It was different than like other bands. He just kind of like just played just like all the songs in a row, and that was just kind of it. It was shorter than usual, but it was really good, and I really enjoyed it, and it's incredible, like how talented he is. Like he's just the one person. Like it's truly a one-man band, even live. Like he sings and plays all the instruments, and he doesn't even use pre-recorded backing tracks live. He just like it's really cool. But yeah, this album also expands Owl City's sound beyond just like catchy synth pop of his earlier albums, which it definitely has songs that are like that, which I love, but it also has some great songs with like hard rock and punk elements as well. The lyrics also really awesome. He tells really cool and interesting stories in his songs, and some of the songs in here are like au- autobiographical about his life or inspired by stories or just other things. And he said this was really him making an album to truly be his own, and it wasn't just like trying to make it popular. He chose like weird song structures and like quirky lyrics just to make the album his own because he could do that and he wanted to, and that's part of why I love it so much. And it's my favorite Owl City album. Some of my favorites, I love so many songs on here: Vitamin C, Kelly Time, Learn How to Surf, Adam Check Please, A Tornado, and Sons of Thunder. So yeah, this is a very enjoyable album for me.
My number two, this was really close between the top two, of course, even though they actually did get different scores from me. It was closer than expected. It's just that this was easier to the band's previous albums. And this is Dead Club City by Nothing But Thieves at my number two spot. And the reason why I gave it a 9.5 out of 10 and not a nine or, for example, somewhere in between is because my favorite album by the band I would consider to be a 10 out of 10, which is their Nothing But Thieves self-titled debut in 2015, which is fantastic all the way through. And this one is too, but I like it just a slight bit less. So I was just like, yeah, I'll give it like a little bit lower than that album. And so this is probably my second favorite project by the band yet. This is a really great one. And it's a concept album, of course, but you also take elements of, you know, 80s synth pop, new wave, alternative rock, indie rock, pop rock, just really a lot of different styles here, but it all feels like one style, very cohesive album as well. But you also have so much diversity in here. You have like your hard rock and tracks such as like Members Only, City Haunts, and Pop the Balloon, but you also have like very somber moments such as Talking to Myself and Green Eye Sienna,
Love
which are
talking.
also great tracks. And and then you have like your full on blown 80s tracks such as like Overcome, which is very similar to that one Don Henley song Boys of Summer, very similar tunes
Oh,
stylistically speaking.
yeah.
And then you also have kind of similar to other 80s tracks such as Edge of 17, you have the opening track Welcome to the DCC. The riff is kind of similar, that's what I'm getting at there. And there's been a lot of comparisons made to that track as well.
I didn't know that.
Um, yeah, and then you have Total Ones that are just like them being almost like prog, almost like with Do You Love Me Yet? It's not like a prog song, but like it's definitely much longer than any of the other songs here. And then you also have like a true prog moment because like in the middle of the song it goes like into a much like, you know, slower state of mind and just like, yeah. Also, as far as concepts go, this is one of my favorite concept albums. My favorite is still Trench by this is my favorite concept album, but this is one of my favorite concept albums for sure. And I think that this album just like really does the concept that it's going for well. You know, it's about like certain types of people going into this like world, or I guess a city or underground kind of like club city, whatever you want to define it as, I guess. But and it's not all the same people throughout the entire album, but it's like different people's stories. And I think, but there also is like a progression because Pop the Balloon basically ends with like the lyric "Kill the Dead Club City." So basically, people finding out this is not heaven, this is not what we came for, right? Let's get the hell out of here. So yeah, it definitely opens up with like talking about how great it is and closes with like this shit sucks, like let's get out of here. So yeah,
Mhm.
also, and then the band's chemistry is so tight, especially live too. I saw them live with my family in Denver. It sucked because I was really sick, but like it's still my favorite concert because it actually made me less sick. I guess music really is therapy. And it was just a great concert. Connor Mason is the best singer that I have heard live, and on this album he sounds fantastic. But he's even a better live singer than in studio, which is like crazy to me. But yeah, that was my second favorite album. Damn good.
Anyways, for my number two, I have But Here We Are by the Foo Fighters from
Yeah.
June 2nd, 2023. It's one we reviewed. It's one that's been on your guys' list as well. And if there's an award for most listened to album of 2023, this would be it. Um, it's funny because it's one that has continually had an upward trend, and it has grown on me, and I've loved it even more and more as the year has gone on. And it's one
Oh,
on
same. Yeah.
where mostly all the songs are on heavy rotation. It is one of their best albums. Um, the vocals are great. There's a variety of different songs. The lyrics are really good. The lyrics deal with heartbreak and loss and just who we are as people and a lot of really weighty themes, but in ways that you really haven't maybe thought of them before. There's a lot of use of great metaphors and stuff like that, which I really find interesting and I really appreciate. And overall, it is it is such a fantastic album that I love more and more. I mean, I won't go too much in depth on a lot of it because we did review it. But my favorites on here are The Glass, Hearing Voices, Show Me How, and The Teacher. I'd probably say if I have to pick a top four, but top
Hey, that's the
of them.
same top four, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it is, and that's funny because it wasn't. I don't think it was our top four when we did this initially.
No, I mean the glass definitely grew on me, so that inserted itself. But I already think I put "Hearing Voices," "Show Me How," and "The Teacher" in my top four previously because those are like interchangeable songs. Those, so yeah.
Yeah, Rescued. I mean, it's yeah,
The
Rescued.
singles are good, "Rescued" and "Under You," but are like they're very more typical sounds for the band. Still great songs, and like,
Oh yeah,
but it's like, yeah, I like Foo Fighters when they're a little less vanilla and they add a little more creativity into their ice cream rather than like I feel like like Foo Fighters like I like them less the more vanilla they become, if that makes sense.
yeah, and Rescue did strike me as a bit of more of that. And then I feel like it's become its own song to me a little more as time goes on, and I really like the lyrics. I like the undercurrent of hope, and some of the things I really like, for instance, is The Glass is one I've listened to a ton where you have a person and I lost somebody about a year ago that was really close to me. So this kind of reminded me of that, you know? You had that person, you had a vision of them, and you had a version of love, you had all these things, and just like that, you're left without it. And we're waiting on this side of the glass. It's like prison. We're waiting on the side where they're in prison and we're out. But also in Earth, you know, we're waiting on this side of heaven and they're on that side. And, just how could it be gone so fast? But anyways, I love this album. I've listened to it so much and it just gets better and better with time. My only issue with it is the static noise I don't like, but I can ignore that. I know when it's coming by now.
Yeah,
And
exactly. But on a first listen, it's like, what the actual fuck am I listening to for a
yeah,
half second there?
yeah, and I get it. It kind of feels like a restart and like a clean slate or whatever, but the album cover is terrible. It's completely white, and then in a slightly darker gray tone, you have one line and "but here we are." And
Yeah, it's not a great album cover.
but then again, they're not a band known for their great album covers. If you
Oh
look at
no,
them,
like none
so
of their album covers are really good, I would
none of
say.
them are. They're all just kind of mediocre. None of them are great. None of them are like, wow, I hate that. But
Yeah,
but
for
yeah,
sure.
no, phenomenal album and a great comeback album from a band we didn't know if they were going to break up this time.
I thought they'd either break up or just like make a really bad album, honestly, because when I heard that they were like coming in with a new album, I was like, damn, that's like so soon after the death. And also just even compared to their last album, that wasn't like super long after Medicines at Midnight, which is just kind of very mediocre, to be honest. And yeah, I was a bit surprised. So there was two reasons I was very skeptic. I was also like, what are they gonna do with drums? Taylor Hawkins is not here anymore. So I was like, that was also a question that perplexed my mind. So I was just like, I don't know if this is gonna be a good album.
But yeah, and I didn't either. But it really is a album from the heart after loss and heartbreak. He lost his mother and his best friend in a year, and to hear him and his daughter sing about his mom, it's truly special. I read his book too recently, and
Oh
it's
yeah, his
definitely
book's
super
really
cool.
good. Yeah.
All right, so my number two is "So Much for Stardust" by Fall Out Boy. Dog in the back. Yeah, I really love this album a lot. It's really strong and unique in my opinion. It's quickly become my favorite Fall Out Boy album. Honestly, I really love Fall Out Boy, but I think this is my favorite of them. And I think they
Never heard that opinion
okay.
before. I'm just saying I'm surprised because I've never heard anybody say that. Like
Oh,
most
I
people go
have.
for their early 2000 or just not early, but just 2000s material from what I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I do like those really a lot too, but just like as a whole album, I is my favorite. But yeah, I think they really outdid themselves, and they did things they had never really done before in songs, like incorporating a lot of strings and piano and horns into the songs. And at the same
Mhm.
time, it's also a great return to form. It's much more of like a hard rock, pop punk kind of sound compared to their album in 2018, which was mostly just pop, which I thought was okay, but a lot of fans hated it, which I understand. I thought it had some good songs, but it was much more pop focused, and this is especially on the other end, much more rock focused. And the singer Patrick Stump, he said that they weren't trying to like pander to external pressures or like striving for commercial hits, but instead they were just trying to make something creative and interesting that they liked. And I think it definitely worked out since so many fans really love this album. It's kind of ironic how like so many bands make better albums when not under pressure to do specific things to get hits by record companies. It's almost
Hence
like
debut being
yeah,
great.
it's almost like bands should be able to do what they want, and they usually make better music, but that's
Yeah.
besides the point. I really love the guitar and vocals on here, and the strings and piano. I love the lyrics and the production as well. And I love how it can sound really like theatrical or dramatic at times with the strings, horns, and the pianos all together, especially with the song I Am My Own Muse. That song is really growing on me. It's like really dramatic. It feels like it could come straight out of like a horror movie or something, just like with the really dramatic strings. I really love that song. Anyways, my favorites are Fake Out, The Kintsugi Kid, 10 Years, What a Time to Be Alive, Love from the Other Side, Heartbreak Feels So Good, and I Am My Own Muse. It was really hard to pick a favorite. My only least favorites,
Clearly.
yeah, list like half the album. I know, I know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I did that for my number one too, so respect, but
Yeah, it's
yeah.
okay.
And then least favorites, I think I said this is the same thing earlier this year, but the two interlude tracks, they're just interludes, so Baby Annihilation and the Pink Sea Shout. Don't ask me why it's called Baby Annihilation. I don't know what that means.
Jesus Christ,
It's
that's
just an
such a bad
instrumental
name.
track too. Like I
That's
Okay.
funny.
I don't know what Baby Annihilation means. It's a weird name. It's just an
Well,
I don't
clearly
know.
not
Well, I know
clearly
what it
clearly
means. I
nothing
just don't
good.
like
I
it.
don't really
Clearly
want to know
nothing
either.
good.
It's I don't know. It's strange,
Clearly
but
nothing good, yeah.
yeah, I just love this album overall. So yeah.
And we are finally here, the number one pick as the album of the year for 2023. My number one, I gave a 10 out of 10 to, which was the only album of the year. I mean, generally I don't give a 10 out of 10s, and if I do, it's usually like one the most I've ever given in a single year is like 6, and I think it's tied between 1991 had 6 10 out of 10s for me, and then 2015 might surprise some people, but that was a damn good
That was a
year in
great
music.
year.
You'd be surprised. So, anyways, my 10 out of 10 of the year and my number one pick, and this is so far my favorite album of the decade. I mean, the decade hasn't really been like here for a while. We only have 2020, 2021, 2, and 3 to go off of. That's only like 4 years so far, so whatever, but this is Unreal on Earth by Hosier. He has been around for like, believe it or not, a decade. His first single was in 2013. His first full studio album was in 14. But he doesn't release albums very often. His second album came as late as 2019, and his third was this year. So that's like a 5 year gap in between albums and then a 4 year gap. So he takes his so much time with his albums, and I really feel like you can tell because musically it's excellent, but also stylistically, lyrically, the composition is fantastic. I mean, I listed like half of the album as standout tracks because I don't want to talk about every track because that would take too much time. Not only because there's 16 songs here, um, and I think all of them are great in one way or another. I don't even think there's anything good on this album. I think it's all great music. Every song here I love. Even track number 9, which is literally just an instrumental, is a fantastic track. It sounds so beautiful. Sounds like it could be a movie soundtrack. Son of Nyx. Basically, what this is that he's like distorting certain vocal parts from all the songs on this album, and then like just playing like a bunch of like beautiful instrumentals over it, and it sounds really good. I know that doesn't. I didn't make it sound as good as it does, but I promise you that is a really good instrumental track. But and then as for genre here, there's a lot here to go off of. You have alternative and indie, which is like what it is at its base of things, but there's so much more that it is, and there's probably more genre that goes into this than uh alt and indie. Like there's a lot of blues here as well. There's a lot of soul, there's some folk influence, R&B, and there's even some gospel influence, which like all of his albums have that. But I think it really adds the cherry on top. I think it gives him a lot more flavor to his albums, making sure that they never become too vanilla, which like yeah, like you have to be a little more stylistic. Some bands do get a little bit vanilla, or artists, I guess you could say. So that ensures he doesn't. Standout tracks. There's a lot here. So track 3, First Time, really good tune. Really liked this one. It wasn't a single, but the first time I heard it, I already loved it. Next track 4, Francesca, really great song that has like a double chorus almost. It has like 2 choruses, but they're like back to back. It's hard to explain. You'll just have to like listen to the song to know what I mean. And then track 6, another single, Eat Your Young. Really good song. It was my most played song of the year, but I don't think it's actually my favorite on the album. It's just I had a lot of time to sit with it, and I listened to it so much because I was so excited for this album based on the singles I had heard. And then All Things End was really great. I actually think the second half of this album overall is better because I think the last 4 songs are like so strong, but the first half is still great. I think it's just front to back, it's very consistent. It's not a front or back loaded album, which I really like. And then To Someone But a Warm Climate was great instrumentally, lyrically, and stylistically speaking. And then the last 4 tracks were some of my favorites. Anything But, really great, really showcased his vocal range on this one. Really loved that. Yeah, these this was my favorite album, I think, for vocals of the year, even though we had a Connor Mason driven album as well. Um, because I think his vocals got a lot better on this album compared to his other ones, even though his vocals were already previously great on his other projects. Abstract, track 14, was really great. Unknown was really great, even though it's mostly acoustic. I think it really goes back to that style and pairs well with his voice. And then First Light just felt like a accumulation of everything that had happened, and just like put it in this epic last track that felt like we're sending you off on like a cruise ship, for example. So that was my 10 out of 10 and number one album of the year. I thought it was fantastic. I have like nothing to fault it for really, because I really think every element was just really done well. I think it shows because he spent like 4 years like probably working on this. So yeah,
And it's a
that's my
long
number
album,
one.
which you don't usually see at
Yep.
number 1. So,
Yeah.
here we are, but here we are, you could say, at number 1, and same favorite. We've got Unreal Unearthed by Hosier, and it came out on August 18th. I went back and forth with 1 and 2. What did I want at 1? What did I want at 2? And I just ended up going with this one. The other one maybe my most listened to, but this one I've listened to a ton as well. And it's just an incredible album. It's to have an album of this length be this great and this different and this unique takes doing.
I don't think I've ever, I mean, with the one exception for me of albums that like every track is great through like 16 or more songs. The only other example I could think of is By the Way by Red Hot Chili Peppers because it's my favorite Chili Peppers album, and I don't actually dislike any of the songs at all on that album, but this album is just, yeah, for being as it is, like you said.
Right. Again, didn't have much expectations. I like the songs I know of him prior to this. But that's kind of what was the tiebreaker for it to be number one is I loved both. Both are great albums, but to have an album of this length be as incredible and unique as it is with guest vocalists and it really is everything you could want. Uh that's what had to put it at number one for me. The album cover, a little weird. Not really wild about that one, but it's fine.
Yeah. It looks cool, but it is a bit weird. Like I think yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
I like the name of it. But yeah, all of it's really great. And even the songs of that he has all have very different title names. So you can each of the
yeah.
songs are pretty distinct.
It's
Um,
truly feels like art, but in music. And obviously, music is art, and they're like interchangeable. But like, it really did feel like that, at
yeah,
times. Like, I mean, I call this 2023's Music Lovers album, and the reason why is because there's so many styles, but also, like you said, I feel like even if you're not a fan of like Hosier's style, which first of all, L get better taste. The other thing is like there's always a song from this album that anybody could love because there's 16 of them and they're all like different styles, but they all are also cohesive.
right. It's
So
it's it's artsy music, and that was the tiebreaker that put it at number one for me because I listened to both kind of an equal amount. Well, no, I listened to the Foo Fighters one more, but I had more time with it, so that's
yeah.
just kind of how that works. My favorite songs on here are DeSelby Part Two, First Time, Francesca, so those all three in a row.
Oh yeah,
Damage,
that was a great run.
yeah, Damage Gets Done, featuring Brandy Carlisle, which is such
Oh
a
yeah, the
out of the
pairing of their
box.
voices is great though.
Yeah, it's such she sounds amazing on this, but it's such an out of the box guest spot that you wouldn't expect. Uh,
Yeah.
given who she is, someone from Warm Climate, Unknown, and First Light. Those are my favorite ones. I didn't like Abstract quite as much as the other ones, but I still loved it. So I'm not, when an album is
Yeah.
great,
For me,
something has
like
to be left.
mine would be like the like two songs in a row. If I had to choose who we are and what's that other one? Son of Nyx. But those are still really fantastic songs. So I can't complain. I'm just saying if I had to choose a least favorite, but they're still great, so I don't care.
Right. But anyways, fantastic album, and yeah, it as a complete and utter shock to me because that's not what I've expected. That comes in at number one for me for the year.
Yeah, so my number one is the same as earlier this year, Intellectual Property by Waterpark. So, yeah, I love this album so much. It's my most listened to album this year. I think by far I've listened to it a ton. Yeah, it's definitely a really feel good album for me. Most of the songs are not super long, but like it's kind of like short but sweet, and like I can just listen to the whole thing like over and over and never really get bored of it. It's not always just like feel good. Like Closer is like kind of an emotional, like more like sad song, I guess, and it's like slower, and I really love that. There's just something about this album that's just like almost like a drug for my brain with music. Like it's constantly getting stuck in my head. Like
Yeah.
Water
Yeah,
Parks
when I
like
heard
lives rent free in my head.
Closer.
So
Yeah, when I heard Closer, I was crying too, but probably not for the same reason. It was because I was listening to Water Parks. I'm kidding.
damn, okay,
I
but
was kidding.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
kidding. I did not cry. Don't worry.
Yeah, but like it's just like super catchy. It's just so fun for me to listen to, and it was super fun to sing along to in concert. And I'm singing them again next year, which I'm super hyped for. And yeah, there's a lot of really great guitarists I love. The synth is great. I really love the vocals. I love the range of the album, the variety in the songs. really the only weakness I have in this is like the songs could be longer, but that's just because like I could always use more Water Parks music and longer songs. But the songs I already love them so much how they are. Um, my favorites, so Closer, I already talked about that. Brainwash is just super catchy, another short but sweet song, really great chorus. Sneaking Out of Heaven is also one of my favorites. The weird thing about that, it was released like 6 months after, but like added to the album, like kind of like a bonus track, but not like a specific like bonus track edition. I don't know, they just kind of put it on the album later. It's kind of weird, but I really love this song anyway. A Night Out on Earth, Two Best Friends, Funeral Grey, End of the Water Feel. I love all the tracks here. So yeah, yeah, that's it.
Um, I didn't obviously I did not like the Water Park sound, but I do respect it, and I respect it as a number one. And the reason I say that is because it's not AG. You didn't put AGR here. You didn't put like Avenged Sevenfold
Well,
here,
yeah,
like the creative weird ass albums of 2023. Both of those would go in that category for me.
yeah. I
That I
mean,
did not like.
yeah.
Avenged Sevenfold's album was like partially drugs though too. Like I know they were on like LSD and other no not, so that would explain why their music sounds like shit on
Maybe
that
they
album.
smoked
But
classic daisies.
probably, I mean, they were like, and I know this. I don't want to even imitate it
Yeah,
because it's so
crazy.
awful. Yeah,
Oh
crazy,
God.
crazy, crazy.
I heard.
Enunciation of words is not that hard, people. All right, so recap. First, what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about how this compares to 2022, whether we thought it was a better year overall or worse, and then also looking on to the future of 2024, what albums we already know about, because there's definitely a lot that have been announced, or just like bands that are like
Not
saying there
that
will
many,
be an
but there's
album.
some.
And then also like briefly, I'll just give my list of albums and explain like very very short. It's like 3 or 4 albums just to explain why they didn't make the list because a lot of people are probably disappointed by now knowing our list and that these 3 or 4 did not make it. So for 2022, starting with me and then Mariah and then Christoph, if I had to say if it was better or worse, I think for me, there's no question about it. This was a better year overall for a couple reasons. Number one, it had a 10 out of 10 album for me, but also I think even my second and third favorite, probably, definitely my second favorite, was also better than my favorite album of 2022 as well. So that also helps. But I also think when you have like numbers 3 through 7 be interchangeable because they're just that great, and for me they were all 9 out of 10s. There was hardly any 9 out of 10s, and there was no 10 out of 10s for me. Um, in 2022, it was a good year, but it wasn't as great as 2023 was. So I'd go with 2023 was better.
Yeah, for me, I would. For me, it's really hard for me because the top. I would say as like overall better because my top 15 I like more than my top 15 from last year. Top albums, it's about even. They 2022 might have a bit of an leg up on that one just because I listened to my top albums of that year so much and I also do of this year. So overall, this one's better. That one is better just better. The top albums are about even to me. 2022 was better for classic rock. This one had more
Oh,
disappointing
for sure.
ones for
This
classic
one was
rock.
better. Agreed.
For
This one was
classic
better for
rock,
new rock though.
right. This one is better for newer rock, but for classic rock, 2022 barely missed. So you've got
Yeah.
you've got both of those things overall, both of them extremely solid. It really just depends on what you wanted out of it. So that's
Yeah.
my
And
opinion on it. But so that's anyways, that's a breakdown of 2022 versus 2023. You could go either way on it. It just depends on what you like because there's plenty to like from both years.
Yeah, I think it's a really good comparison. Like both years, I feel like I've been like super strong for music. I've like probably the strongest in actually, well, for this decade. I don't know. They've both been really
yeah.
good years for me. Like I love a lot of music in both. I feel like it's almost like neck and neck for both years. I think this year I'd say it's like slightly above. I think like overall I prefer my top albums, but like for last year also there were so many albums I loved, and like going back to my list, like I would probably change it a lot from last year. There's a bunch of
Oh
albums
yeah,
I've
same.
discovered since. Like, I'm like, oh, I wish I put this on my list and this on my list. And I'm
Yep.
like, I'm not going to actually go back and change it because right now there's not much point anymore. But like, just thinking about like, just overall, like, there's so much great music in like both years. I'm like, 2023 like slightly gets the edge, but like 2022 was really great, and like I definitely would change some of my placements around in last year's list. Like I think like Freedom would be a bit lower just because I haven't been into Journey as much, but tastes change and everything. So yeah, both
Yeah,
really
Yeah,
great years.
my
yeah.
top two would be the same. Other than that, anything's subject to change.
Mine,
Yeah,
my yeah, mine would be Unlimited Love at 1, and then Asphalt Meadows moves down just to 2.
I think mine would
Um,
actually be Asphalt Meadows at 1. I don't
Yeah,
know.
oh,
mine.
that's respectable. I mean,
But
it's
yeah,
definitely
mine's
better than
still
free. It's
Yeah,
definitely better than Freedom for sure.
and a lot
mine's
more
still
unique and
Gangs All
creative
Here and
sounding.
then
So
Unlimited
that
Love.
was a great
Yeah,
one too.
also 2024, it's just some albums that I've heard about, not necessarily that have been announced for sure, but I mean, we said this last year, but AWOL Nation, I know it will
Please,
happen this year
we
because
need a new
he
AWOL
actually did
Nation.
say it's gonna. I
He did
agreed.
say it'll be
It's been too
2024.
long. Yeah, basically
Hmm.
confirmed it. Also, Black Keys and Pearl Jam are coming out with albums. Very curious
Hmm.
to see what they bring to the table. I think both will be good, but we'll see.
Yeah.
And then I am curious for this one. I don't think it'll be good. I don't think it'll be as bad as their last one because they're very hard to do. Green Day, um, I'm interested to hear, but I
Oh
don't
yeah.
think it'll be that good.
Yeah.
I said
So for me, of course, there's the AWOL Nation album. There's I know I Bon Jovi's been seen in the studio. They're supposed to have an album out in 2024, so I'm excited for
oh,
that.
I did not know about that, but I'm interested to hear it if so.
Yeah, no, I've heard that they've been seen in studio. There's talk that there's going to be a 2024 album, so I'm excited for that. It's been about a year more than they usually have in between records, at least in the 2000s and 2010s and 20s. And then one that has been announced for sure when he put out a single, I listened to it and I love it, is Sebastian Bach, former lead singer of Skid Row, will have another solo album out. I absolutely love his 2007 one, which has a bunch of songs featuring Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses. So I'm excited for that. And the Black Keys, I'm excited to see what they put out. But so far, I don't think 2024 will stack up to the past 2 years, but we'll
Well,
see.
there's
It's
so
coming.
many. I mean, I didn't think that in 2023 at the start, but that's mainly because there's no way I could have known that all these albums, most of them get announced like in the middle of the year or at
Right.
this like not at the start, but in the spring. Most happen in spring or summer in terms of announcements as far as that goes. So I don't really know. There's probably so many great bands I love, and also so many great bands and albums I'm gonna discover. I'm get betting on that too
No, for sure.
as well, and so I have no idea. I just know that like
Hmm.
my betting favorite for 2024 for my album of the year, as far as any albums I know, is AWOL Nation. But as
For
far
sure.
I don't really know. Like, yeah. Also, I know
Yeah.
Judas Priest is coming out with an
Oh
album. I
yeah.
have no
Yeah.
idea if
I'm
that's gonna be
excited for
good or
that
not.
one.
But
Their last album
yeah,
was
I'm
in
excited.
2018 was really good, so this should be
Yeah,
interesting.
I agree.
Yep, and we'll see if Guns N' Roses puts out anything else.
Yeah, maybe new album
I'm gonna
finally?
guess no. I'm
Probably
gonna guess
not.
no.
I mean,
Probably
I
they've been
not.
love
They're
doing
very
they've been doing good with
inconsistent.
singles, but will they make a new album? Who knows?
no,
Probably not.
No.
I didn't say
I
album.
yeah,
I
I
said
know. It would be
Oh,
nice
the
to have
Zoom's
an album
about to
though.
end. It's
more
about to
more
end.
singles. I love
Yeah.
Perhaps. That's a fantastic song of the year.
Yep. And that was our top 10 list. So thank you for watching and bye. Or top 15, sorry.
Yeah, it was top 15. And yeah, talking about
Yeah.
24. So.
Yeah, tell us what were your favorite albums this year? There's a great year in music. What was your favorites? Yeah, thanks for watching and bye. Take care. Smash that like button.